Greatness begins long before you step onto the court. It begins in your mind. It begins on early mornings. It begins when you want to quit. Greatness builds with each step you take, and a successful training program makes sure those steps are taking you in the right direction. The body of an athlete is the vehicle for achieving greatness. But this vehicle needs to be constantly maintained, repaired, and improved. Every time an athlete steps into the ring, onto the court, or readies themselves to perform, their bodies take a hit. The physical demands of sport can be huge, and the only way to meet these demands is to have an appropriate training program in place. All sports are different, as are all athletes, so training programs must be tailored specifically to the type of sport being played and also to the unique needs of the athlete. This involves many factors, including the athlete's objectives, strengths, weaknesses, age, and gender. There are many different kinds of training programs. The one that's appropriate for you depends on the sport you're playing and on you, the athlete. The definition of fitness is the ability to meet the demands of a physical task. It doesn't matter if you're boxing, rowing, playing basketball, or involved in any other type of sport. The components of fitness always remain the same.
Muscular strength and power, agility, reaction time, balance, coordination, anaerobic power, and speed, muscular, and cardiorespiratory endurance.
Strength is the ability to exert a force against a resistance. Strength is an integral component of many sports, from the force required to grip a tennis racket to the force exerted by the quadriceps and hamstrings in a rugby scrum. We can build strength by increasing the intensity of certain exercise, by increasing the weight or resistance, and by increasing the number of repetitions we do of certain exercises. Two major elements of power are strength and speed. Speed describes how fast you move your muscles, and strength describes how strongly you can contract them. Power is extremely important in sports like boxing, football, or cricket. Power can be developed through weight and circuit training. Agility describes how quick you are on your feet. It involves the ability to change direction quickly and efficiently. Agility requires balance, speed, coordination, and power. Agility helps speed up reaction time. This is the ability to process information via the nervous system and to react quickly. Reaction time is important in sports like sprinting, tennis, and hockey, where quick responses have a direct influence on performance. Balance is the skill of maintaining the body's position, either in a stationary position or while in motion. Having good balance means you can adjust your body's position to avoid falling over. Balance requires efficiently coordinating the efforts of our ears, eyes, and muscles. Flexibility also plays a major role in most sports. It can play a minor role, such as warming up before an event, or a major role, perhaps being required in the event itself. There are two main types of muscles:
Agonist muscles, also called protagonists, cause movement to take place, and antagonistic muscles oppose the movement and determine the amount of flexibility a muscle has.
The goal of flexibility training is to improve the range of those antagonistic muscles that permit the athlete an extended range of motion. Having high local muscle endurance enables the body to perform sustained tasks like rowing or cycling. There's aerobic endurance, anaerobic endurance. These different forms of endurance help the body of an athlete to perform for a longer period of time and have a greater energy output than an untrained body would. Cardiovascular endurance builds the strength of the heart and its ability to deliver blood to the muscles. Cardio helps the body to endure repeated exercise, like running long distances, rowing, or even just staying on your feet. Coordination is the ability to bring all these elements together and have them all work in conjunction with one another.
Muscular endurance is needed in sports like basketball, when players are repeatedly jumping up to the backboard and rebounding over and over again.
It's important to determine which fitness components to focus on in your training program. This requires you to know two things: the physical demands of the sport and your own level of fitness. You can identify the physical demands of the sport by conducting a gains analysis. This can be achieved through movement analyses, work-to-rest ratios, and skill analyses. The use of GPS tracking data and video analysis in recent times has been particularly useful in gathering this information. Standard fitness testing protocols can help you determine your personal level of fitness in each of the components of fitness. Identifying your strengths and weaknesses in comparison with the demands of the sport will allow you to develop an effective and individualized training program. Great athletes grow from working great training programs. Every sport is different. Every athlete is different. And every training program should be tailored to the athlete's specific needs.
These differences aside, every training program should address a range of fitness components relevant to the individual requirements, such as muscular strength and power, agility, reaction time, balance, coordination, anaerobic power, and speed, muscular, and cardiorespiratory endurance.
In many competitive sports, the game, the race, or the fight is already won or lost long before the athlete steps up to contend. Winning doesn't start on the field. It starts here, in the gym, on those dark early mornings before the rest of the world has woken up, or late at night when all you want to do is sleep. In the gym is where the real fight begins. You can train all day and all night, but if the training isn't appropriate to the sport, or for you as an athlete, then all that hard work could be for nothing. There are many different types of training methods, each with various benefits that help the athlete improve a different aspect of their fitness. Finding the one that's right will take some time. Continuous training is a steady and unbroken exercise that builds aerobic and muscular endurance. The most popular form of continuous training is running at a regular pace for a long time. This builds stamina, helping the athlete perform at a higher level for a longer period. Interval training is similar, but focuses more on completing hard repetitions with a brief recovery period between each one. An athlete will run hard for a set length of time that is appropriate for them. After that, they reduce the intensity of the activity by either resting, walking, or jogging slowly, before hitting it hard again. The process is then repeated, and is focused on building aerobic endurance, muscular power, anaerobic power and speed. Fartlek training combines both continuous and interval training. It allows athletes to alter the speeds and time intervals at which they complete running bursts and dictates when they fall back into periods of low-intensity continuous activity, such as jogging, and for how long. Circuit training can be tailored in many different ways. It takes into account the training goal and the athlete's level of fitness. It works at improving aerobic endurance, power and speed. The format of circuit training can vary, but it's usually a set of 6 to 10 different exercises like sit-ups, squats, bench lifts, or any other type of exercise that you want to incorporate. Each exercise is performed for a set number of repetitions before the athlete moves on to the next. In circuit training, it is important to have short rest intervals between each exercise and a longer rest between each circuit set. To produce fast, powerful movements, athletes undertake plyometric training. Plyometric exercises work at strengthening the muscles so they can contract at a faster speed and with more power. This helps the athlete to leap higher, hit harder, and pull stronger. Weight training builds strength and muscular endurance. It's an exercise based on repetitions, sets, and gradually increasing the weight being lifted. There are different types of weight training targeting different sports. For instance, rowing requires a different set of exercises than basketball does. Unlike some of the other training methods, weight training requires equipment, such as dumbbells, a weight bench, and various other pieces of equipment. Athletes are required to produce bursts of speed over short distances in many different sports. To generate the amount of speed, power, and strength required, athletes need to undertake speed training. This requires a combination of strength training, power, and sprint practice. Speed training needs to be built up over a period of time. Athletes start off practicing sprints over a reasonable distance and a reasonable amount of time. Then they gradually increase the sets and distance, if appropriate, while maintaining good technique to maximize speed. Pilates is another training method that can be beneficial when used in conjunction with the other techniques we've covered. It works at strengthening the core postural muscles and developing body alignment, but it also has many other benefits, such as enabling relaxation, improving coordination, increasing stamina, and aiding stress relief. Pilates exercises help the brain and body to work smarter, not harder. Performance excellence is born in the gym, so having the correct training program is essential.
There are different types of programs, such as continuous training, interval training, fartlek training, circuit training, plyometric training, weight training, speed training, and Pilates. It's just a matter of finding the combination of methods that's suitable for you.
Training requires dedication. It takes commitment, and it takes perseverance. To reach their full potential, an athlete needs to incorporate a few different training principles into their program. An athlete needs to be specific about what aspects of their fitness they want to improve. Then they can work specifically to tune those muscles and hone their skills. It's important that the training is appropriate for the goal. There's no point undertaking weight training if an athlete is trying to improve hand-to-eye coordination. Progressive overload is when an athlete slightly increases their level of training over a period of time. This could mean increasing the amount of reps they perform during the overall program, increasing weight, or increasing the duration of the training. The key is to increase in small increments of no more than 10% per week. So, if an athlete jogged for 20 minutes one week, in the following week they could gradually increase that to 22 minutes. The frequency in which training is undertaken depends on the athlete and what their goals are. A professional athlete may train intensively 6 days a week, while others may not. Training 3 times a week is a good start to help maintain fitness and improve specific skills. Intensity describes how hard an athlete trains. There's no point hitting the gym a few times a week, but never breaking into a sweat. To see improvements in both skill and fitness, athletes need to push themselves to work harder. But they must be careful to increase the intensity of their training sensibly. Attempting too much too soon could result in injury. When we talk about durations in training programs, we mean either the length of a session or the length of a program. When training, try to keep durations fluid to allow for special circumstances such as carrying an injury or preparing for an upcoming event. Keep in mind that a training program is not set in stone. It should be constantly changing and adapting with the fitness levels, skills, and needs of the athlete. Remember to mix it up. Keep it interesting so the athlete doesn't become bored and lose motivation. When trying to build up stamina and endurance, you don't always have to be jogging. You can skip or use an exercise bike. The important thing is that you don't let the program become stale. When designing a training program, specify what aspect of fitness you are aiming to improve. Gradually increase that through progressive overload. Make sure the training is frequent, intense, and for a set duration. And always allow room for adaptation. No matter what sport it is, we seem to keep score of absolutely everything. From the fastest times to how many baskets are scored. We even keep statistics on how many punches are thrown and landed in a boxing match. So it's quite natural for an athlete to set and record goals in their own personal training. It's a key component of a sporting and competitive nature. Setting goals provides a motivational focus. It gives an athlete something to strive for. If the goals are realistic enough, they can lead to feelings of satisfaction, confidence, and accomplishment. But if goals are unrealistic, they can have a negative effect and cause stress, anxiety, and disappointment. By setting goals, we can also track improvement and over time use that information to evaluate our progress. When we talk about goal setting in sport, we usually refer to 2 timeframes. There are long-term goals, which could span anywhere from 1 year to 4 years. These involve preparing for things like winning championships and competing in the Commonwealth or Olympic Games. Then we've got short-term goals. These are the steps that lead to long-term goals. Short-term goals are extremely important. They are the stepping stones that make long-term goals achievable. It would be pretty daunting for an athlete to set a goal of winning gold at the Commonwealth Games if they don't have any steps to lead them there. Whether it's obtaining a gold medal or winning a championship, the principles of goal setting remain the same. A clear and precise method of goal setting is known as the SMARTER principle. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timed, evaluated, and recorded. An athlete needs to be specific about the goal they are trying to achieve. You can't just say you want to be a better basketball player. That's too general. There's no clear path leading toward the attainment of that goal. But if you said you want to practice 4 times a week and work on improving your foul shooting, Then you have a specific goal. The athlete's goal also needs to be measurable, for two reasons. First, the athlete needs to know when they reach it. And second, they need to be able to measure their progress. You want to skip faster? Set a goal of 100 skips per minute and then try and reach that goal. Once you have, change the goal to 110 per minute. If an athlete's goals can be measured, they are likely to be viewed as more achievable. Not all goals can be achieved straight off the bat. Some will require an athlete to set secondary goals to help them attain their major ones. For instance, if you want to introduce weight training into your program and you don't have any weights, you may have to put some money aside each week to purchase a set. You need to make your goals attainable if they are to be realized. Goals must be realistic to be achieved. They need to be just within the athlete's grasp and must be something the athlete truly believes they can achieve. Only the athlete can decide whether the goal they're striving for is realistic. A goal, any goal, no matter what it is probably realistic if an athlete believes they can achieve it. Another aspect of the SMARTER principle involves setting a time limit to achieve goals. Don't say, I want to be able to cycle 50 kilometers in 90 minutes. Say, I want to cycle 50 kilometers in 90 minutes by the end of the year. Setting a time limit will keep the athlete motivated and on track. Without setting time limits, it's likely that our goals will never be achieved. Over time, an athlete's goals will change and evolve. An unexpected opportunity may arise, or they may incur an injury. Goals need to be flexible in order for them to be achieved, and therefore regular evaluation and adaptation is essential. There's no point in trying to stick to a goal of competing in 2 weeks' time if an athlete has an injury that's going to take 6 weeks to heal. Athletes should record their goals. They must write them down and reread them. This will lead to a real sense of accomplishment when the goals have been achieved. If an athlete keeps track of their progress on a regular basis, they can see which aspects of their training they can improve on and which ones are on track. A handy way to work toward achieving your goals is to use the SMARTER method. Make sure your training goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timed, evaluated, and recorded. To stay on track and achieve any goals you've set, you need a game plan that sets training targets, competition targets, and allows flexibility to accommodate for your progress as an athlete. An annual plan can be divided into 3 main phases called macrocycles: the preparation or pre-season phase, the competition or in-season phase, and the transition or off-season phase. Each of these phases can be broken down further into mesocycles, which can last from anywhere between 2 and 6 weeks, and also week-by-week planning, called microcycles. Having this degree of organization in the planning stage of the macrocycle helps an athlete to be ready for the competition phase. Depending on the type of sport being played, the competition phase can incorporate multiple events that comprise a season, or just one major event with a couple of smaller ones leading up to it. Regardless of the type of event, every athlete needs to partake in the transitional or post-competition phase. This phase helps the athlete avoid burning out, allows their body to regenerate, and helps them relax mentally. The transitional phase can last from weeks to months, depending on the length of the competition period. As you wind down from one macrocycle and look to another to begin, You'll find this is a perfect time for reflection, self-evaluation, and analysis. We all judge success in different ways. For some, success could mean beating a personal best. For others, it could mean being the best. How we judge our success depends on the individual. It's important that we take the time to evaluate our progress. This might mean seeking feedback from coaches, judges, or teammates, or watching footage of past competitions to find any weaknesses that could be improved in the following macrocycle. And when you've finished reflecting on the year that was, after you've tracked all your successes, improvements, wins and losses, it's time to set new targets with a whole new set of challenges and a whole new set of goals. To stay on track, athletes need a game plan that outlines all their targets and goals in the various stages of the macro cycle. Evaluating success and progress helps athletes plan for the future. They need to know their strengths and weaknesses before they can work on improving them. Sport isn't about winning or losing. And it isn't just about how you play the game. Sport is about excellence. It's about pushing yourself harder and faster than the other guy. It's about doing the things the others won't. Sporting excellence is primarily a fight against yourself. And it's a fight that starts long before you step into the ring.
Our energy for physical activity comes from what we eat and drink. It doesn't matter whether the physical activity is moderate or intense. How well we are able to perform at any level has a lot to do with diet. Good nutrition is essential for good physical performance. In this program, we will explore how nutrition and physical activity work hand in hand to help anyone stay healthy and performing at their peak, whether that's at World Championship level or something short of that. We'll look at an introduction to good nutrition and physical activity, how much activity should we do, nutrients for physical activity 1 and 2, and fuel requirements for physical activity. The two basic components of good health for any human being are a balanced diet and regular physical activity. It's a sad fact that Western nations in particular have a large number of people who lack one or both of those components in their lives. They are overweight or obese. Overweight and obesity increase the risks of many diseases, including heart disease and diabetes. Regular physical activity is recommended to help avoid becoming overweight. To have the energy to participate in a healthy level of physical activity, a balanced diet is essential. These two basic components of good health go together. They are critical to being healthy and staying healthy.
Many lifestyle diseases are linked to the way we eat and the way we live our lives. So eating a healthy diet is obviously one of the most important things that we can do to keep our bodies healthy. I mean, it's certainly one of the things that you've got probably the most control over in these busy lives that we lead.
At the elite levels of sport, tailoring diets to the needs of athletes is nothing new, but it has come a long way in recent years with research and technology.
We feel that nutrition plays an important role in both the training and the competition lives of our athletes. And each athlete has certain aspects of their training or their competition that's important that nutrition can touch. And it may be about achieving the right physique, it may be about staying healthy so that you can train harder, it may be about having enough fuel for the kind of sessions that you do and enough fluid. lots of different angles for different sports.
Knowledge about nutrition, diet and physical activity through research and development at the elite levels of sport ultimately filters down to the rest of the population.
At a basic level, the needs of athletes are very similar to all of us, so we all need to make sure that we have a varied diet and we make sure the majority of our food choices are coming from plant-based foods that provide a good source of carbohydrate and fibre. We also need moderate amounts of protein and smaller amounts of fat. I guess the main difference for athletes is that they're exercising at a higher level, so they have higher energy needs. So they need to make sure that they're supporting their training with more carbohydrate and making sure they look after their fuel needs.
So a balanced diet helps us stay healthy by avoiding lifestyle diseases and giving us energy to be physically active. But exactly what constitutes a balanced diet? A balanced diet is one that contains a healthy combination of each of the 5 food groups. Fruit and vegetables for vitamins and fibre, dairy products like milk, cheese and yogurt for calcium and protein, lean meats, poultry and fish, dry beans, eggs and nuts as sources of protein and iron, breads, cereals, pasta, rice and noodles for carbohydrates and fibre, and fats and oils in sparing quantities. Water should also be drunk in ample quantities, and foods containing excessively high levels of fat, sugar and additives should be avoided. While not everyone will compete at world-class level in their chosen sport or leisure time activity, it is important that physical activity is part of a daily or otherwise very regular regime. Muscles make it possible to be physically active, and their energy is fueled by what we eat and drink. The 2 basic components of good health working together. The 2 basic components of good health are a balanced diet and regular physical activity. They work together. A balanced diet enables us to be physically active. Together, they help prevent lifestyle diseases. Research and development at elite levels of sport filter down to everyone else. A balanced diet consists of the 5 food groups and ample water. Energy for muscles is fueled by food and drink. So how much physical activity should someone do during the course of a day? The answer depends on a number of factors, such as an individual's age, gender, their occupation, the environment in which they live, and their ability to be physically active. While anyone's level of physical activity is ultimately their choice, there are many organisations with vested interests in encouraging people to be more physically active. This includes governments. Health accounts for a major proportion of government spending, particularly in developed countries. In recent decades, government campaigns and strategies have urged people to live healthier lifestyles. Governments cannot control how much physical activity people do, but they can and do recommend minimum levels for able-bodied people to maintain good health. State-sponsored campaigns operate in many parts of the world, including the USA and Canada, the UK, Europe and parts of Asia and Africa. In Australia, the national government has established a set of physical activity guidelines. They state that while appropriate levels of physical activity vary with age, a minimum recommendation for any adult is to put together at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity on most, preferably all, days. If possible, it is also recommended to enjoy some regular, vigorous activity for extra health and fitness. For adolescents, the recommendation is 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day. Moderate activities include brisk walking, bike riding, skateboarding, dancing, climbing stairs, vacuuming and gardening. Vigorous activities are those that make you huff and puff, and might include sports such as netball, any code of football, swimming laps, or training for sport. To maintain a healthy physical activity program, a balanced and healthy diet is essential. In upper echelons of sport and athletics, the level, duration, frequency and intensity of physical activity are all greatly increased. To perform consistently at this level, the partnership between the energy taken in through the diet and the energy expended through physical activity is critical.
The needs of athletes can be very different. If you consider someone like one of our rowers, they do very heavy endurance type training, so they have very high total energy needs and high carbohydrate needs, whereas an athlete in a skill-based sport like a gymnast will have much lower requirement for carbohydrate. In a sport like volleyball, it's important that they're big and strong, so they might focus on eating in a way to get them bigger. So things like their carbohydrate intake, the amount of protein that they have, and the timing of their food intake is very important. Where another athlete, for example, a female soccer player, it might be more important that they're very fit and try and minimise their body fat levels.
When athletes compete at the elite level, their training programs, which involve a whole range of different physical activities, help develop both body and mind over time. The same is true of the approach to nutrition. While specific training or event demands are met on a day-to-day basis, monitoring and modifying dietary nutrient intake over the longer term is also vital to help performance and to maintain the optimal body weight.
We're probably looking at two things: trying to keep the athletes' fuel needs covered for their training session so they can train harder, recover and get to the next session. So that might be all about what they eat every day, but particularly what they eat before, during and after the session to stay well fueled and able to do the session that they want. And a separate angle to the training phase might be physique, trying to achieve the right level of lean body mass, muscle mass, so strength and size, or low levels of body fat to make that athlete best perform in their chosen sport.
The right amount of physical activity for any individual depends on many factors. Governments and other organisations recommend that adults should do at least 30 minutes of moderate physical activity every day, and adolescents at least 60 minutes. At the elite levels of sport, frequency, duration and intensity of physical activity are much higher. Nutrition to support physical activity is important on a daily basis and over the longer term. Carbohydrates and dietary fibre, such as that provided by whole grain pasta, rice, breads, cereals and grains, are critical nutrients for physical activity. Between 6 and 12 daily servings of these foods should be part of a healthy, balanced diet. Most of the energy for our muscles is provided by carbohydrates, and that energy is particularly important when you're pushing the body hard. Athletes competing in events where sustained energy is needed often load up on carbohydrates.
Carbohydrate is a major energy source within the body, whereas dietary fibre is something that's useful in terms of keeping your bowel functioning, keeping you regular. It can also be protective against things like cancer and some other dietary related diseases. It also has a bulking effect, so it actually helps you to feel full, so it can help to control appetite.
In recent years, scientists and dietitians introduced a ranking for carbohydrate foods called the glycemic index, or GI. GI ranges from 0 to 100, and it is a measure of how quickly carbohydrate foods release glucose into the bloodstream. Foods with a lower ranking release glucose more slowly than those with a higher ranking. Generally, lower GI foods are preferable. They help maintain balanced blood glucose levels. But there are some exceptions when it comes to high-intensity physical activity, and in particular, recovery.
On a population level, it's probably useful to have your blood sugar levels at a fairly moderate level, so having some of those low GI foods at each meal can be a useful thing. For athletes, it might be useful when they're trying to recover that they have a high GI food so that they can replace their carbohydrate levels very quickly, whereas on a day-to-day basis, the lower GI foods might be more useful.
Fat is also a rich source of energy for the body, and its consumption can account for 20 to 30% of energy intake in a healthy diet. Fat also carries fat-soluble vitamins and some antioxidants. But too much fat can be harmful and increase the risk of disease.
Fat is another energy source within the body, so we use it for a fuel source. It also has a protective function, so in lining some of our organs and protecting our bones. It has an effect there.
The two main types of fats are saturated and unsaturated. Saturated fats tend to be solid at room temperature and are found in foods such as butter, hard cheese, meats, milk and cream. Unsaturated fats tend to be liquid at room temperature and include those found in vegetable oil. Unsaturated fats are preferable in the diet to saturated fats. Unsaturated fats help to maintain healthy cholesterol levels. Proteins come from foods such as lean meat, nuts, eggs and cheese. Protein can become an energy source under some circumstances, but is particularly important for building and repairing muscles. Recommended intake of the meat, nuts and eggs food group is 1 serving a day for adolescents and adults, and 2 servings a day of dairy products. Again, individuals involved in high-level intense physical activity may benefit from higher dietary protein intake or protein supplements.
Protein, it has a structural component, so it forms our muscles. Some proteins also act as transporters and carriers within the blood in the body.
Between 6 and 12 daily servings of foods containing carbohydrates and dietary fibre are recommended. Carbohydrates supply most energy. Athletes who need sustained energy often carbohydrate load. Low GI carbohydrate foods release glucose into the blood more slowly. Fats are another source of energy. The two types are polyunsaturated and monounsaturated. Proteins are important for muscle building and repair. Drinking ample quantities of water is important for anyone. Water keeps the body hydrated and flushed and is vital for many of the chemical reactions at cell level, which keep our bodies healthy. During moderate and intense level physical activity, it is common to sweat. It helps keep us cool, but it takes water out of the body.
Fluids are a really important part of our exercise and performance. Our fluid systems help to keep us cool. When our bodies exercise, we generate heat, and one of the ways we can get rid of that excess heat is to sweat. But in losing the fluid, we're then making it difficult for other body systems to work. So replacing that sweat loss is going to be an important part of being able to keep your body functioning well, continue to be able to dissipate heat and to perform well, and just to feel good.
Careful attention to fluid intake while exercising and afterwards is necessary.
Fluid is important to anyone who's exercising. Dehydration can impair performance, and if it becomes extreme, it can be very dangerous. So it's very important that all athletes, or anyone who's exercising, make sure that they're replacing their fluid losses.
Sweat does not just take away water. The body also loses minerals and electrolytes by sweating, such as sodium and potassium. Specially formulated sports drinks replenish fluids, carbohydrates and minerals and electrolytes.
Well, water hydrates, and does a pretty good job of that. But if you're in a situation of exercise where you're also burning a lot of fuel, then putting carbohydrate in that drink's a good thing, because you can both refuel and rehydrate at the one time. And that's why sports drinks have been developed with the carbohydrate added. They also have some sodium and electrolytes added for two reasons. One is the taste of that drink encourages you to drink more, but also you're replacing some of the electrolytes you've lost in your sweat, and so that's a generally good thing in terms of your recovery and ability to keep exercising.
Other minerals and a range of vitamins are also important in a balanced diet and have functions that are crucial for physical activity. They come from a variety of foods.
Vitamins and minerals have a huge number of functions. They're involved in our immune function, they're involved in transporting substances within the body, they're involved in releasing energy, so each one has their own specific little range of functions.
Calcium is a mineral found in all forms of milk, cheese and ice cream. It helps build bones and teeth, assists in the clotting of blood, and helps nerves, heart and muscles to all function correctly. A total calcium intake of 800 milligrams per day is recommended. Iron, which is found in lean red meats, leafy green vegetables and enriched breads and cereals, makes hemoglobin and is critical for transporting oxygen to and from the body's cells. A total daily iron intake of 10 and 15 milligrams is recommended for males and females respectively. Vitamins can be fat-soluble or water-soluble. Fat-soluble vitamins are vitamins A, D, E and K. Water-soluble vitamins include the B group vitamins, B1 and B2, also called thiamine and riboflavin. Vitamin C is also water-soluble. Thiamine assists in the synthesis of energy from food in cells and keeps nerves healthy. Dietary sources include pork, liver and other organs, wheat germ, enriched cereals, soybeans, nuts and milk. Riboflavin assists in the synthesis of protein, fat and carbohydrates for energy. Among its dietary sources are milk, organ meats and enriched breads and cereals. Water keeps the body hydrated and flushed and is needed for chemical reactions at cell level. Sweating during physical activity removes water and electrolytes from the body that need replenishing. Minerals and vitamins are important for many different functions in the body. Important minerals include calcium and iron. Some vitamins are fat-soluble. Vitamins E and K are examples. Some are water-soluble, such as the B group vitamins. Different foods provide us with different nutrients that work together to keep our body healthy and able to meet the demands of the physical activity we do. For the average non-elite sports person, the quantity of food eaten should be proportional to the amount of physical activity. This avoids becoming overweight. And while quantities eaten vary between people according to age, gender and occupation, the balance of nutrients consumed from the 5 food groups should be consistent. When you're tailoring a diet to specifically meet the demands of more vigorous and intense physical activity, it is important to look at how different foods and their nutrients convert to the energy needed.
We first look in each event as what does limit performance, what are the things that make an athlete fatigue, and what role does nutrition play in those. And if we can find ways of keeping the athlete better fueled or enough fluid on board or feeling comfortable, we can help them to achieve their best performance in that event. So if we look at a range of sports and perhaps pick Swimming is a good example of a sprint sport. There's not much you can do during the race in terms of changing nutrition, so we need to fuel and hydrate our swimmer up before the event. That swimmer is going to have to compete probably 3 times to get to the gold medal, and so after each of their swims we're going to have to, during the warm down, start the recovery process, refueling, rehydrating, and helping the athlete then cope with the next day, probably again competing and getting to that gold medal.
Elite level and professional athletes need to know about their diet and how it relates specifically to the demands that training and events put on their bodies. While they are involved in physical activity more frequently and for longer periods than the average person, energy expenditure varies enormously between sports and events. The typical energy used by a road cyclist might be 4 times that expended by a middle-distance swimmer.
Our athletes that are eating in the dining hall have really different needs. We have small, petite gymnasts who have very small nutrition energy budgets, and so they have to be very careful that they make very good choices of what they're eating within the small amount that they might eat. At the other end of the scale, we might have really large heavyweight rowers or really tall basketball players or volleyball players who are still growing and developing, who are trying to bulk up and who are training, 5 hours a day, and their energy needs are huge. And so for them, the challenge is just to eat enough, and within that, still eating the right quality so that they achieve the sorts of changes to their body that they need to achieve.
In many cases, high-level athletes will supplement their dietary intake by consuming nutrients in other forms.
The form that's probably the most useful to athletes are sports foods, and so these are things like sports drinks, liquid meal supplements, bars. These are specially manufactured to contain the normal nutrients that everyday foods do, but just in a way that's probably more convenient for an athlete to eat. And then the second category of supplements are things that claim to sort of supercharge, or we call have an ergogenic effect on performance. So it's above and beyond what normal nutrition would achieve. Now the thing is that there's millions of products out there, but very few of them have lived up to their claims when they've been put to research. There are exceptions though. Some of those exceptions are caffeine, bicarbonate and citrate used for buffering, and creatine.
Different foods provide different nutrients. The quantity of food eaten should be proportional to physical activity levels. At elite levels, diets are tailored for athletes' energy requirements. Energy requirements differ greatly between sports and athletic events. Professional and elite athletes must know about their diets and how nutrient intake can directly affect their performance. Often, extra nutrients are taken in the form of dietary supplements. Whether it's for a world record, or to maintain good health, or just out of necessity, people rely on their bodies to be capable of physical activity in a whole range of ways to get through their day. Physically active bodies are fueled by a balanced diet consisting of a range of nutrients derived from the 5 food groups. From the top down, the relationship between dietary nutrition and performance during physical activity is well known. In the workplace, the local park, or in a sold-out stadium, anywhere we are physically active, the nutrients we take in through what we eat and drink has a lot to do with determining our level of performance.